guys, welcome to another fabulous episode of the 10 Minutes with Boston Chris podcast. I am your host, Boston Chris. So very happy to have you guys here with me today for yet another great interview with a fabulous singer-songwriter from TikTok. I've been following Ross for a really long time on TikTok, and it was really a lot of fun to get to talk to Ross Gipson today on the show. I'm really excited about you guys seeing this one and learning who Ross is, because he's just an awesome guy, and I appreciate Ross very much for coming on the show. But let me read you a little bit from his bio from his Reverb Nation page. Quote, I wrote my first song when I was 18 years old. I'd been listening to Robert Johnson a lot, decided to write a blues song. It was called Society's Blues, and thinking back on it, I can safely say it was awful. It didn't matter, though. At the time, it was good, and it was enough to get me interested in songwriting. Soon after I heard that song, I started listening to Bob Dylan, and my songwriting really started to grow after that. The years that have followed have seen me grow as an artist. I have discovered new music, Leonard Cohen, Ben Folds, Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, Dan Bern, Bonnie Prince, Billy, the Mountain Goats, to name a few. And I've had a lot of people encouraging me along the way. And I've had a lot of great musicians who I've worked with and played with who have helped me to cultivate me as an artist. I continue to grow even now and push myself to be as good as I can be at this. Ross Gipson is a TikToker, an artist, a comedian, a singer-songwriter, and so much more. A lawyer, I forgot lawyer. And with over 1 million views and likes on TikTok, Ross Gipson has the vibe that everybody should be looking for. I think you guys will love him. And Ross has been very generous enough to share with us one of his original songs, which we're going to put right here. It's called Passing Imagery. I hope you guys like it. And right after the song, we will get right into our very interesting conversation with the one and only Ross Gipson.
Passing imagery gets the best of me when I drive these miles past the gravel piles. It's so easy to see there's diamonds vexing me. It's so hard to know which way this wind will blow. She tells me about a man with better eyes and hands, like a walking dream, captain of his team. I love nothing better than to talk about her weather. Blue skies and sun. Here comes another one. cystic bitch. I'll never scratch your itch. 'Cause when you talk so tough, nothing's good enough. I was so blind, I couldn't see your kind, but now I clearly see. Passing imagery.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tiara Pennington, and thank you so much for tuning in to 10 Minutes with Boston Chris.
Hey guys, welcome to another fabulous episode of the 10 Minutes with Boston Chris podcast. We are super stoked today to have my friend and guest this week, Mr. Ross Gipson, songwriter, artist, comedian, TikToker, lawyer, lots of stuff to go over with Ross today, and I'm a huge fan of his. I've been following Ross for at least a year now on TikTok, and I'm really looking forward to picking your brain. I appreciate your time today, Ross.
Thank you.
So, first question, just to kind of break the ice, what is your favorite drink right now? What have you been drinking?
Are we talking adult beverage or non-adult beverage?
Either one is fine with me, whichever your favorite is.
Well, I love a Coke Zero. That's kind of my non-alcoholic drink of choice. But if we're calling our shots, I like an old fashioned.
There you go.
That's one of my favorite drinks, is an old fashioned.
Love to hear it. Yeah, so I'm down with the zero sugar drinks too. I think my favorite is the cherry Pepsi zero sugar though. But
Not bad.
yeah,
Not bad.
sometimes it's hard to find the Pepsi though, and I have to go with the Coke. So I don't dislike the Coke version of it. So yeah, so I always ask the drink question just to try to break the ice a little bit and get folks comfortable. But again, I want to thank you for your time and being a guest on the show. So first things first, where are you from? And tell us what your first musical memory is or was.
Okay. So I'm originally from Southwest Missouri, down around Joplin,
Okay.
little town Carthage. But I've moved around a bit. I now live in the St. Louis area, and that's where I work and live. But I've lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I've been all over the place.
And so what growing up, what was the first thing you can remember that was music related?
So my grandparents had an old like record player that played the small, I think they're 78s or 45s, and they had a whole bunch of just little A side, B side records that they would play, and I can remember listening to Elton John and Along Came Jones by the Coasters and a whole bunch of old songs, and we would just tear ass and dance around the house as kids to all those songs. So that's probably my earliest musical memory, is just being exposed to that kind of music.
That's
Also,
amazing. The Coasters, I would not have guessed that.
Yeah. My dad was a big Willie Nelson fan too, so he had all his music, and we listened to that quite a bit too.
It's always interesting as an interviewer to hear a songwriter's influences, especially someone like you who's so eclectic. Like, you have so many different influences that shine through with your art.
Yeah.
Growing up as a kid, what was one attribute that you learned as a kid that still kind of stands true for you today?
Well, I was diagnosed with childhood leukemia at the age of 6.
Okay.
And I had to grow up real fast, and I had to learn pretty easily to kind of like prioritize things in my life, what's important, what's not. And I think that's the one thing that's carried over from childhood into adulthood is my ability to not sweat the small stuff and to see the bigger picture.
And that's
And
definitely a huge part of your channel for sure, I think, right?
it is, yeah. I'm pretty open about what I've been through health wise. I'm an advocate for, other people going through that kind of stuff, and it's just, it's something that sticks with you, even though I haven't had any kind of relapse or anything since childhood, but it's still something that's very apparent in my life. It's still something that's there, and I have a lot of people that come across my page and stuff that are going through that same stuff. So it's something that I try to address and make people feel comfortable about when they come forward and talk to me about it.
And I love that about your channel too. You're a very inspirational guy. That's why part of the reason why I wanted to talk to you today. There's a lot to unpack about Ross, and I'm really excited to introduce him or you to all of our followers and stuff. So, what instruments do you play? I've seen you play the ukulele. Is there more than that as well?
Yeah, so I play. I started doing music on my own with drums. I was a drummer for many many years, and then I learned a little bit of guitar, but I got these tiny little hands, so guitar doesn't always work for me.
Right.
So I decided to learn a stringed instrument that I could easily manage, and that's why I picked up ukulele. Um, my thing with ukulele though was I didn't want to play it as a novelty. A lot of people play it as kind of
Right.
a common or novelty, but I wanted to play it as my instrument. So I
Mm.
don't play it like a lot of people play it. I play it almost like it's my guitar,
Mm.
and I think that's what a lot of people like about my playing, particularly with the ukulele. But I also played dulcimer. I started playing dulcimer a little bit, and I'm thinking about buying a lute.
Let's go.
And learning
L, just so
lute.
we're clear out there, that's an Lute, lute,
Um,
which is a musical instrument. I love it. I love it. So your social media says that you're a cancer survivor, a lawyer, and a Trekkie. But
Yes.
also, I know you as a follower of yours, as a singer, a songwriter, an artist. You do so much as a content creator. Is there a strategy for you behind what you post and share every single day?
Yes, I do. I'm constantly sort of changing my approach. When I first started doing this, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just kind of posting things and seeing what people liked. Um, my sister, who's a big musical influence on me too, she was actually the musician of the family. My oldest sister, she's the one that talked me into doing this in the first place. She's always admired my songwriting and was like, you need to get out there and get your stuff out there. So um, when I started, it was the intent to have this be a vehicle for my music, but I wanted to add some comedic elements and some other things too. But as far as like what content I did, I was just in the early days, I was just trying anything to try and get views. Now, now it's pretty heavily music centric. I try to do some original songs. I try to do some cover songs. I try to do the a cappella stuff to kind of showcase the fact that I can actually sing a little bit. And then I try to do some funny things to kind of break up the musical monotony. But I try to post at least 1 to 2 things a day.
And I love the questions of the day and the interactive stuff you do with your community as well. I know as a creator too that it's very difficult to break up that monotony and be
It is
successful at it too, because you kind of build an algorithm based on a certain kind of content. So when you go off brand from that a little bit, that off brand could really get almost shadow banned where it doesn't even get noticed because it's not what you
good. And
normally post.
so I guess an easy way to look at my approach is I'm a history buff and I love all kinds of history. And one area of history that I find immensely interesting is vaudeville.
Okay.
I love studying about vaudeville and learning about vaudeville. And TikTok and social media has kind of become like a modern day vaudeville.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, when you were on vaudeville, you had to keep your act fresh. And once it started to get old, you had to do something to make it exciting again, or else you were out of a job.
Mm.
And I kind of feel that's how TikTok and other social media is with trends and stuff like that. You need to recognize what's going on and what people like, and try to maybe incorporate some of that into your own content, or you may have a hard time getting views and stuff. So there is a strategy involved. I'm always watching TikToks and seeing what people are honing in on, and trying to figure out some things that you know I can do that maybe they will like. And I've been successful a few times.
And complacency is one of the biggest killers of creativity as well. I mean, just, you know, being comfortable is not always a good thing when you're creative. So
Right.
before TikTok came along for you, what was your life in music at that point? Were you doing shows and things like
No,
that, or?
no. I was doing music pretty heavily up until 2011 when I went to law school. And then when law school happened, everything creative about me just kind of ceased,
Yeah.
because law school became the time and the investment. And when I got out of law school and got, a job, it just took me a while to get back to that. And what really got me back into songwriting and stuff again was just I had a lot of downtime during the pandemic. And so I picked up my ukes and started writing songs again. And when my sister talked me into going on social media, that's that's really when sort of my volume and my just output started increasing. When you're doing it every day and you're forcing yourself to do it every day, it becomes it I don't know, it's like it activates your brain, and it's
Mm-hmm.
all you can think. So that's I think right now I'm at my peak creativity wise, my peak output, my peak substance to what I'm doing. Everything is at its peak right now. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah,
But
I bet it is. I bet it is because, I mean, when you're a creative person, we're all creative people, but I mean, when you find that outlet for it, and then you have to kind of put it on the back burner for school or education or work or whatever that may be, that creativity is still there. It's just not being utilized. Um,
right.
and that can be a bad thing sometimes too when you're, kind of stifling your own passion, so to speak.
Well,
What?
yeah, and that it goes back to that complacency thing you talked about. You get complacent in your present life, and you think this is what I want my life to be, so this is the thing I'm going to focus on, and you forget about all those other things. And once I went back to songwriting, I I was like, I forgot how much I love this and how much I enjoy performing. So it was like a reawakening. It was nice. It was nice to go through that.
And I love to see it too as a fan of yours. We mentioned, or you mentioned, the comedy and trying to break things up. I love the goofiness of your channel. I mean, let's be real. I love that kind of stuff from you, and it kind of gives a glimpse into who you are. To be fair, so how do you make it look so easy to kind of put yourself out there so fully at times?
Well, I've always been a ham. I've always been somebody that likes to seek a little bit of attention. But I grew up in a family of just wise asses and sarcastic practitioners. My Both of my grandparents on my mom's side could spin a yarn and tell a story. My mom's funny. My dad was sarcastic. Even on my dad's side, where my relatives were maybe a little more conservative than my mom's side, they were all pretty sarcastic and had dry wit and stuff too. So we were always competing with each other in my family for who's the funniest, who's got the best
Mm-hmm.
joke. And performing was also just a huge part of my family. I had a sister that was a concert pianist up until she went to college. I had another sister that was involved in musical theater. Then you had me. I did mainly the visual art until I started doing music on my own. But we were all creative, and that was heavily emphasized by and encouraged. And so just that and having friends that are like-minded and just you get to be quick-witted and think in terms of being funny. And plus I've always loved comedy and watching comedy on TV. So the goofiness and all that just comes naturally. It's just an extension of my personality, and I've never taken anything too seriously.
And that's the beautiful thing about TikTok too, is you can just kind of live your life, and situations will present themselves to you for your TikTok.
Right.
It happens so often. Like you'll just be like, oh man, and then you just have to be ready for it, right? Like you just have to be ready, like clip farming almost.
Well, and it's one of those things where if you see that thing and you get a spark of inspiration, you have to do it in that moment.
Yep.
When you're going to about it and it's going to be too late. So you really have to strike while the iron's hot.
Yep. And then I tell my wife all the time, we have to be ready just in case something happens today. So, like, we have our tripod and the ring light and all that stuff goes in the car every single day, no matter what we're doing. You just never know.
It kind of drives my wife crazy, too, when I'm like, I'm going to get a video of this.
Yeah. So, you did mention that you are a leukemia survivor. Can you tell us about your journey as a cancer survivor?
I mean, it was, it was hard, obviously. I was so young, I was 6, that I didn't really understand fully the totality of what was going on at that time. I knew I was sick. I knew I had a lot of things wrong with me. And I went through a lot of things with the procedures that they went through and that they put me through, the treatments that they put me through, that were hard and you can't imagine a 6-year-old going through that kind of stuff. But I had great parents that were very good at making all of what I was going through seem normal. Like, this is just, you're going to the doctor. This is just you going to the doctor. This is just you going to the doctor. And they were very good at downplaying the severity of what was going on and just saying, hey, as long as you take this medicine, as long as you go and do this test, you'll be fine. And so I think that mindset of me knowing that, there's nothing really wrong with me, I think that's what carried me, that just not dwelling on the fact that I was in pretty bad shape. That plus some good genetics, I think, helped me get through those times. But, once the leukemia was done and everything like that, I did have to deal with looking different, sounding different, having different abilities than everybody else. And I had a community that was really good in Carthage at accepting me for who I was and not treating me any different than anybody else. So growing up, it wasn't that hard to deal with all the things that I had to deal with. Now, being an adult, that's then a different story, because once you get outside that bubble, you realize that the world sometimes doesn't care about you very much.
Right.
You have to be ready for that, and that was the adjustment. I think that was really the adjustment. Once I got out of college and kind of got outside my community and put myself in the world, I think that was the big adjustment. And it's been an adjustment, but it's normal now.
And so, mentally speaking, like you mentioned earlier, you don't sweat the small stuff, and that's as a direct result of your surviving leukemia. So,
Right.
mentally speaking, nowadays, as an adult and a successful adult, in a high powered job, some would say, mentally speaking, how are you? Just with your day to day mental health.
It can be a struggle, not because of my health. Just my job and my career are very stressful. Sometimes I'll tell my wife, I'm like, I don't know why I became an attorney because it's so stressful day in and day out. So that's a bit of a struggle sometimes dealing with that. Um, Other than that, I mean, I'm pretty even keeled. I still don't sweat a bunch of small things. If we have challenges that come up, I know that it'll be hard for a little bit, and then it'll be okay. And
Right.
that's just a mantra that has carried through, all the way through childhood. It's only going to suck for a little bit, and then once it's over, you'll be fine. And so that's how I view, every challenge that comes along.
And that's probably a direct result from being 6 years old and essentially being a badass and surviving what no kid should ever have to go through. Um,
Right.
One of the things that I admire about you, Ross, is how you handle bullies and trolls and stuff like that on the internet.
Yeah.
And I mean, the internet is so ugly and negative at times, but I would love to hear your mindset when it comes to the ugliness that you have to deal with on the daily. Like, what do you, how do you go about that?
I ignore most of it because I don't understand. I don't understand bullying on the internet. It takes more effort and more brain power to sit there and write out an insult to somebody than to just scroll past whatever it is that you're
Yeah,
seeing.
I know. It's crazy.
And I don't understand trolls because anytime they comment or say something on a post, that just boosts that post
It
and
helps
makes it
you. Right, it helps you. Yeah.
right. And I tell people all the time, I said, I love the fact that these people come on and say these mean things because it's like they're my own rocket fuel. They're just boosting my
Hmm.
position with the algorithm. So that's one reason I usually go and goad them. I want them to respond. I want a
Same.
back and forth. That conversation is just going to boost the algorithm. But my mindset, whenever I do go after some of these people, is, you know, I think it was Aslan from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe that yelled at the White Queen and said, "Don't quote the ancient magic to me, witch. I was there when it was written." I'm an old school troll. I I was trolling on the internet back when the internet was still chat rooms. Um,
Right. AOL.
I, I remember very clearly back in college, I'd go into sex chat rooms and I would change the topic of conversation from sex to donuts. And it would piss people off to no end. So, like, that just the mindset of me just kind of being an asshole on the internet when I was younger, I take that to these people. They don't know that they're trolling a troll. And so, whenever I go after them and I hit them back with something, a lot of times they don't know how to handle that because a lot
Hmm.
of people that get bullied on TikTok, they just either block them or they roll with the punches. They don't punch back. And
Hmm.
sometimes you got to box these people in the ears to let them know that, don't screw around with me. I will come at
Yep.
you.
Yep. They don't know how to deal with it when you meet their energy at all, do they?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So one
That's
of the
that's the
So one of the things that I love about your channel too is you have this process of perhaps taking somebody else's TikTok where they're playing a piano or an instrument or whatever, and then you'll come in with the duet system in TikTok and write lyrics to the music. What do you love about that concept, and how free does that allow you to be as an artist?
oh man, it's one of my favorite parts of TikTok. So I do love doing duets, especially when it's a duet where I get to write lyrics because that's my strength. I'm a good lyricist, and I
Mm-hmm.
always have been. Um, so anytime you can take a musician who's better than me at an instrument and they can play a melody and I can put my words to it, I'm going to try to do it. And it's incredibly freeing because I don't have to worry about playing the instrument. I can just concentrate on singing and writing the words. And, you know, a lot of times it gives me the opportunity to maybe write a serious song, or in some cases, I've written some pretty goofy songs.
Yes.
Um, to people's open verse. One of my first viral videos was "Bitch Back Off My Pizza," which was a completely goofy duet that I did in the very early days of my TikToks. So it's tremendously freeing. It allows me a lot of different opportunities to explore lyrics. I use them a lot of times as writing exercises to just flex my rhyming skills and my rhythm skills, and to try and come up with something interesting. But sometimes they turn into full-fledged songs like it did with Soda Pop Potato Chips.
Right. And so that's why I wanted to kind of talk about this, because what you do reminds me of like rap freestyle. That's what it reminds me of, is like watching you take somebody's music and then essentially just make up a song on the spot. And I love that sometimes it's a serious song, sometimes maybe not. That's what makes Ross Ross, and that's what I love about it. That's why I wanted to ask you about the duet system and how that, like, and I know that some of those songs that you freestyle, so to speak, do end up fully fledged songs,
Yes.
which is pretty cool too. So how does that go? How do you go about that? Do you have to work with the person that you're duetting and
Yeah.
um,
Uh, so for instance, Soda Pop Potato Chips, that was one that after the initial reaction, because that one went viral. I knew that I wanted to make that into a larger song. And so, but to do that in that situation, you have to track down the person that did it, which can be a challenge sometimes. And you basically have to ask them permission to go ahead and add to it. And then you have to, make sure that, and this is just me thinking as a lawyer, that you have to make sure you give them credit, and if you put that stuff on Spotify like I did with that song, you have to make sure that they get a split of whatever comes in off that song.
right?
So it can be logistically a problem, and it, it really became the problem with that song because it took me a while to kind of nail down the other artist. His name's Kalon DiHulio. He's really good. It took me a while to track him down and to talk to him. And in the meantime, I had, thousands of people saying, when are you going to release this? When are you going to release this? When are you going to, and you can't until you get that permission. So that's logistically, it can be a problem. But it also can be challenging because sometimes, they're playing in a key that doesn't maybe work for ukulele or something like that. So you have to figure out, how can I do this song? Can I transpose it? Can I put it in a different key and make it still work? And so it can be a challenge. It can definitely be a challenge.
Yeah, and I know that you've done a few more collabs with the same artist from Soda Pop Potato Chips, right? Like
Oh
you've
yeah,
done other duets with him that
a
I've
whole bunch.
seen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like once you find somebody you kind of jive with, just keep at it, keep banging that
Yes,
drum. So
I've got about 3 or 4 people on TikTok that I check pretty consistently to see if they've got anything new, and I'll try to add something to that.
So I found you through, and you may not remember this because it's been over a year probably, but there was an older gentleman that plays the piano, and he did a version. He played Edelweiss, and I don't know if you did Edelweiss or if it was a Beatles song that he played or something. But that's how I found you, because I did a duet with his Edelweiss version, and then I found you through the same guy who you did a duet with him as well. I don't know if you
Was
know
that?
who I'm.
I think that was Sheridan, right? Was he English?
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yep. But
Yep.
that's how I found you. But let's say people are just hearing about Ross Gipson for the first time right here during this interview. How would you describe your music to somebody who doesn't know you?
Uh, it's definitely in the singer songwriter, I think, genre. The singer songwriter is kind of a catch-all genre that can mean
Really
a lot of.
is. Yeah.
It's folk, heavily folk influenced, with some pop and some blues elements, and maybe a dash of country.
Yeah. And I wanted to talk about Elven folk songs.
Yes.
I had never heard of an Elven folk song until until I started following you, but I absolutely love what you do with these songs. Tell us what an Elven folk song is.
Well, okay. So this has to do with a book that I'm working on. I'm co-writing a book with my oldest sister. The book is about, it's a fantasy kind of sci-fi novel that we're working on. And it's about a society of elves that live in this kingdom. And they derive their music or their magic from music. They can sing, they can play instruments, all of them can. No matter, you could be a fisherman and you can still sing. I mean, it's just innate in them to be able to do music. And all of their laws, their customs, their culture, their history is built on different poems, different songs, different pieces of art, different stories. And so what I've been doing is we've been sort of working on the nuts and bolts of this story and how we're going to lay it out. Is I kind of taken a page from J.R.R. Tolkien, and I've written songs that I want to be part of the folklore of this world. These are actual songs that will be in the book, that will be referenced,
Wow.
and stuff. And so these elven folk songs are all part of this big story that I'm writing. So anything that I say, this is an elven folk song, or that it's part of that story and part of that world. It's me, the songwriter, writing them, but it's attributed to different writers and different poets and songwriters within the framework of that story.
Amazing.
And it's been this undertaking, but it's been fun.
So, ironic enough, my wife is writing a fantasy novel. She has been for years and years, and you are a major part of her playlist when she is writing.
Oh, really?
So
Cool.
she loves your vibe, and she always says, "Yeah, Ross gets me in the mood to write." So,
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to do with these elves was I didn't want them to be like your typical Tolkien elves that are like, frail and thin. And I wanted these to be more like, think of people from Appalachia, like coal miners and people that live in the hills and stuff like that. Hardy people with that kind of music and that kind of vibe. That's the vibe I wanted to go for with the elves. So that's why the music has been heavily sort of folky, heavily bluegrassy, heavily, you know,
mm-hmm. That's so
all of
hard to
that.
do too when you're creating a universe from scratch, right? Because like you have to
Right.
you have to create a new language and new names and new locales and maybe new music. Like I know watching my wife try to create language within her book,
Hard.
where yeah, like she's trying to create a language for a group of people that don't actually exist IRL, you know.
Yeah.
So she's like, no, I have to create this language, and then I have to, I have to translate it as well, so people can know what the characters are saying. But like, man, how difficult is that? Just trying to create all that from scratch.
It can be extremely difficult, but my sister and I, we've got this synergy going on between the two of us. And like, I'll call her up and I'll say, "Hey, I had this idea today about the story." And when I talk about it with her, we'll not only flesh out that idea, but we'll come up with like 17 other ideas that we want to do. And so it's just one of those things where we we play very well off each other, and there's a good creative chemistry, which I've never done in the context of writing a book before. Because I used to write stories, but like I've never collaborated with anyone on a story, and
Hmm.
it's tremendously fun.
I can
So, but
imagine.
it can
And
be difficult when you're actually trying to do it and write it down on the page. That's the hard part.
so let's talk about songwriting process because you did.
Okay.
I imagine I've man, I've interviewed a lot of songwriters over my time. I've been very blessed, and you are just so intriguing to me because your voyage from beginning to end on a song just feels so made up in the moment. How much of it is made up in the moment, first of all? How much of it is like quote unquote freestyle? And what is your process? Are the lyrics just coming to you, or does the music make you feel the lyrics? Like, how does it work for Ross?
Um, it's I would have to say before the pandemic, my songwriting process was very formulaic. I would maybe come up with a chord progression that I liked. I'd have a line or two in my head, and I would try to build a concept around the one or two lines. Now, um, after the pandemic, because I'm doing this pretty much every day, because you know, I feel a little more comfortable in my ability, and I feel a little more comfortable kind of touching on things that maybe 15 or 20 years ago I would have been like, I don't want to write a song about that. That's too personal. Now I don't really care. I if the song wants to go where the song wants to go, I'll let it go there. And if that means it's a very bleak song, that means it's a very bleak song. If that means it's a goofy song, that means it's a goofy song. And so being comfortable in with that and just letting the song happen, I think has really increased my process and my ability to write a quality piece of music. Freestyle, no, I'm not really much of a freestylist. That's in the duets. That's mainly me freestyling. That's me like whenever I have those, I'll listen to it 2 or 3 times. I'll get a lyric in my head that I want to come back to or I want to incorporate, and then I'll just write a song. I'll just write a song, and I don't care what it is or where it goes. I'll just write a song. But with my own original material, right now my process has been I want to tell some kind of story. I want everything to kind of unfold in a logical storytelling type of way. And so I will try to tweak the song after I've written it with lyrics or verses, or I'll move things around so that it has a cohesive story element. Because I've noticed just in doing TikTok for the almost 3 years that I've been doing it, people want stories in their songs. They want a story. They want something that they can relate to and something that tells a story. And that's where the entertainment comes in. And knowing that now, I can craft songs that have those elements in them, and I know that that's going to be something that people will find some accessibility in, because that's the key right there. Is you want people to be able to access your songs on their level and bring their own experiences to them, so that they can enjoy that song too. It's a lot harder to have somebody enjoy a song like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of one that's real up its own butt. I have a couple like that. But when you write a complicated song that has a lot of metaphors and things that are meaningful to you, people can't always access that.
That's
You
right.
got to find a balance between those types of things that you want to do, and then I guess pop song elements that will allow people to access those things. So finding that balance is what I try to do in every song.
I love that
Yeah.
answer. Just prior to this interview, last week I interviewed a Grammy Award winning songwriter, and when he was young, he wrote a song. I can't remember the name of it, but the gist of the song is his grandfather died, and when his grandfather died, his grandmother stopped living. Now, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
his grandmother's still alive. This is a metaphor, right? She stopped living the day he died. In fact, that was the name of the song. She stopped living the day he died. So, this song, he brought it to his publisher, and he was like, the publisher was like, this is not going to work. Like, nobody else's grandfather died. Nobody else's grandmother stopped living the day he died. You have to make this more open ended. And so he went back to the drawing board and he ended up writing a song called While You Loved Me, which went number 6 for Rascal Flatts.
Okay.
So
Nice.
the what you're saying right there is exactly what he went through with that song and how it shaped there was very little access for people when he first wrote the song, but when he turned it around and put it back out with the While You Loved Me, it was more accessible to people because of the relationship part of it. Just the open-ended words of the song instead of being so specific, you know?
Yeah, I, I, yeah, I think that's an important element of songwriting is we have to remember that there's an audience out there that's listening to this. And if we want to be, if you want to write complicated songs for yourself, that's fine. But if you want an audience to, like you or be into your stuff, you do have to think about, am I writing something that is going to be, that is going to communicate itself to people on some level? And if the answer is no, then you should go back and tweak that in some way.
And it's already hard to do anyway because you're telling a story, right?
Right.
And I mean, mainstream radio and mainstream record labels, they don't care about stories in songs. What they care about is marketability in songs. And so
Correct.
marketability and stories are not the same thing when it comes to mainstream music. So typically, when you are a storyteller, you are typically an indie or independent singer-songwriter. And that's when you can shine. And so here's that question for you. Let's say you were trying to do what you're doing now 25 years ago, before TikTok and before YouTube and all of that stuff. How would your path have changed as a songwriter, do you think?
Man, I don't know. I think that I probably would have had more success. Because, like I said, I've kind of figured out that that's the game of songwriting is trying to find that balance. I think as a younger songwriter, I was too much into my own art and too much up my own rear end to change it or to write something that's more accessible. Now, you know, now that I know that if I'd have been doing that 20, 25 years ago, I I don't know. I might have some songs on the radio now
Right? And
because I, that's the thing that TikTok has shown me is that you know for the longest time people the people around me that knew I was a songwriter they would tell me you're good at this. Having TikTok tell me that, having thousands of people tell me that, millions of people, that's more validating, and that does show me that I do have some abilities, and I've noticed that the more accessible I've made my songs going forward, the more people have stuck around and wanted to hear more of them. And so I wish I didn't learn that lesson a long time ago. But life's not over yet. I still got a lot of time to be able to
yeah,
get these songs.
still a lot of growing to do, a lot of growth yet to grow. So why do you feel, maybe looking back, why do you feel like TikTok is has worked so well for you, whereas maybe some of the other platforms haven't? Like, what is it about TikTok?
I think it's because the algorithm's so different than all the other places. Um, I also think it has to do with the fact that people that surf TikTok, they're doing this a lot. They're flipping, they're flipping, they're flipping, they're flipping, they're flipping. And if they're going through and cycling through that many videos, that means the likelihood of you coming up is larger. It's greater.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, they're getting on, and unless that thing pops into their feed somehow, or unless they're surfing for hashtags and you happen to be the thing that they see, you're not going to get seen as much. So
Right.
I think it's repetition of people cycling through these videos so quickly, and then I can't discount the fact that I look different than most people. So when I pop up on somebody's feed, they're probably going to stop and go, "What is this?" And then once they do, they're going to see me playing a song, singing something, or acting real goofy, and they might go, "Oh." oh, okay, this is strange, and they might stick around and try to see more stuff. So I do think that that has a lot to do with it. I've had so many people that have said, I stopped here because I thought it was a joke, that this is actually really good, which is one of my favorite comments that I ever get, because
Absolutely. Yeah.
that's been my life. I love going out and just knocking people's socks off when they're like, "Who the hell is this guy?" It's one of my favorite things to do in the entire world. But I think that's why. I think it's just because it's a combination of having a face that people are going to be interested in stopping on, having an ability at making music or making people laugh that is accessible to people, and just the fact that this is a site that is built on just cycling through videos quickly.
And the ultimate don't judge the book by its cover story, right?
Correct. That's right.
So, Ross, again, thank you so much for your time. I have one last question for you, but I got to warn you. This has, by and large, probably been the hardest question that most of my guests have to answer. And it's
Okay.
I always ask it in the form of like a professional wrestler. It's, who do you think you are? Who is Ross Gipson, according to you?
Who is Ross Gipson? Ross Gipson is not not that special. He's just an ordinary person that likes to goof around and likes to write songs and draw and stuff. He's pretty easygoing. He's laid back. He's just a dude that enjoys laughing and loving and celebrating life and everything like that. And I don't. It's not that I don't take stock in myself, but I don't get I don't get worked up over me or most things. So I'm just pretty easygoing. I just happen to have some abilities that you know people like.
And so, if people are just hearing about you for the first time, where would you send them to follow along with everything you have going on?
So TikTok is the big one. That's Ross Gibson 815, and and after that, I'd say YouTube under just Ross Gibson altogether. That'd be the other one. So TikTok and YouTube are where I post the most things. I'm on Instagram and Snapchat and all those other platforms too, but I don't use them as much as I do YouTube and TikTok. YouTube is kind of the backup if TikTok goes away. I still have YouTube, and I'm trying to develop a following there. Slowly but surely, it's happening.
Well, I will definitely make sure both of those links are in the description below for people to have easy access to
Thank
your
you.
stuff. Absolutely.
It's time to jam.